Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping straight into the source material today because, honestly, it provides one of the most actionable systems for personal change we have ever covered.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to challenge this sort of myth that transformation requires these massive, earth-shattering decisions.
Mm.
We're often looking for that one big resolution that transforms our lives overnight.
Right, the magic bullet.
Exactly.
Ah.
But the sources we've looked at today tell us the true power lies in the inverse, the tiny, almost invisible 1% improvement.
That's absolutely right. Our mission today is really to synthesize this step-by-step system for building better habits, offering you a shortcut to understanding the profound power of what the sources call atomic habits.
Atomic habits.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that these small, consistent shifts done daily are really the foundational components of a system that, well, it pretty much guarantees remarkable long-term results.
And what gives this concept such immediate credibility, I think, is the really compelling origin story of the author's own discovery. This wasn't just some theoretical musing, right?
Mm.
This system was born out of profound physical necessity.
Oh, completely. It followed a catastrophic injury that essentially shattered his life plan.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So it was back in 2002. He was playing baseball, just a regular day, and he got hit squarely in the face with a baseball bat that slipped out of a teammate's hands.
Oh, wow. Accidental.
Totally accidental. But the immediate aftermath was just terrifying. He suffered a serious concussion, a broken nose, several facial fractures, needed emergency surgery.
Jeez.
The medical team even had to induce a coma just to stabilize him. And when he eventually woke up, he was completely disoriented, suffering from amnesia. He apparently thought the year was 1998.
No way.
Yeah, thought Bill Clinton was still the president. Just totally lost time.
That kind of disorientation must have been such a crushing psychological blow on top of the long physical road ahead.
Absolutely. And the sources describe him suffering from double vision for weeks. He couldn't drive a car for 8 months. Can you imagine?
8 months.
Stuck in basic physical therapy, not even for strength, but just practicing fundamental motor patterns like literally walking in a straight line without stumbling, things we take for granted.
That slow, grinding recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds bad enough,
Mm.
but then the emotional climax came when he tried to return to the baseball field a year later.
Yeah, that had to hurt. He'd identified as an athlete his whole life, and yet he was cut from the varsity team.
Okay.
The sources note he played a humiliating total of just 11 innings of high school varsity baseball. Imagine the psychological toll, having that identity just stripped away, replaced by the reality of being, severely injured and then rejected.
But that initial failure, that realization that his old identity was gone, that was actually the necessary catalyst, wasn't it?
It seems so. When he went to college at Denison, he knew he couldn't jump straight back into the massive goals he once had. So he made a conscious decision to start small, like microscopically small. Okay. He focused on tiny, consistent behaviors that just gave him back a sense of control. Things like ensuring he had good sleep hygiene.
Simple stuff.
Really simple stuff. Keeping his naturally messy college room neat and tidy, improving his study habits. Just building blocks.
And this is where the system really begins to take root then. Those small, manageable improvements, repeated daily, started to accumulate. Like casting tiny votes for a new identity, as the self puts it.
Exactly like that. He consistently lifted weights, transforming his body over several years from a light 170 pounds to a pretty muscular 200.
That's a significant change.
It is. And the amazing result, 6 years after that life-altering injury, was that the accumulation of all those small votes led to him being named the top male athlete at the university and an academic All-American.
Wow. From being cut from the team to top athlete. That's the story that makes this deep dive so potent, I think. It proves the system works, even in the face of profound adversity.
Mm-hmm.
So let's nail down the core term then. How exactly does the source define atomic habits?
Okay, so an atomic habit is defined as an extremely small amount of a thing, the single irreducible unit of a larger system.
Irreducible unit.
Yeah. They're not about massive willpower or some radical change. They are the components, the building blocks of a system of compound growth. They're small, they're easy, often overlooked, but incredibly powerful because they're repeatable.
Okay, let's unpack this compound growth idea because the math is probably the easiest way to demonstrate why we undervalue these small changes so much.
The numbers are pretty startling, actually, because they demonstrate the non-linear nature of improvement, which, our brains aren't really naturally wired to appreciate.
Right, we think linearly. Effort in, result out.
Exactly. But think about it this way. If you commit to getting just 1% better every single day for 1 year, just 1%, the end result is that you are not 365% better, but nearly 37 times better.
37 times better. That feels
Correct.
exponential. It feels almost fictional.
It is exponential. It's the power of 1.01 raised to the power of 365 days. That calculation yields 37.78. But the inverse is also true, and often more immediate in its destructive potential. If you allow yourself to get just 1% worse every day for a year, your resulting capability declines almost to zero. That's 0.99 raised to 365, which equals 0.03. Basically, you're wiped out.
So habits, therefore, are explicitly framed as the compound interest of self-improvement.
Precisely. Their real value, just like compound interest in finance, is often only apparent when you look back years later.
It's a fantastic comparison because, just like investing, those early gains feel negligible, almost pointless sometimes. But consistency is the only factor that matters over the long haul. And we have an incredible real-world demonstration of this concept, the aggregation of marginal gains in the story of British cycling.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the best sporting examples in history, probably.
Yeah.
Before 2003, British cycling was, well, a complete punchline.
Really?
Yeah. For nearly a century, since 1908, British riders had won only one single Olympic gold medal.
One gold in 100 years.
One. And they had never won the prestigious Tour de France in 110 years of trying. They were so consistently terrible that apparently when they showed up to races, European bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them bikes.
Get out. Why?
They genuinely feared that if other professionals saw the Brits using their gear, it would actually hurt their sales because of the association with failure.
That's organizational rock bottom right there.
Pretty much. So they hired Dave Brailsford as the new performance director, and his mandate wasn't some radical reinvention, but this specific philosophy: tiny marginal gains.
Okay, the aggregation of marginal gains.
Exactly. Brailsford's strategy was simple in concept, even though the execution was incredibly detailed. Find a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do.
Everything.
Everything. His core belief was that if you improved every single tiny process related to riding a bike by just 1%, the cumulative effect of hundreds of these small gains would be absolutely game-changing.
And they took that 1% rule to the extreme, didn't they?
Yeah.
It went far beyond just, training harder.
Oh, way beyond. This is where it gets really interesting. They started with the obvious mechanical things. Redesigning the bike seats for optimal comfort, rubbing alcohol on the tires for better grip, using specific lubricants.
Standard stuff for a pro team, maybe.
Right. But then they began optimizing all the invisible stuff, the psychological factors, the environmental factors. They had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature between races.
Heated shorts.
Yep. They started using lighter indoor racing suits outdoors because they were found to be slightly more aerodynamic.
Oh, yeah.
They even went into hygiene, which is something you'd never connect to cycling performance.
Hygiene.
They hired a surgeon specifically to teach the riders the proper, most meticulous way to wash their hands to reduce the tiny chance of catching a cold. Because a cold could derail training for a week, right? Another tiny 1%.
That is meticulous.
They focused on optimizing sleep, determining the best type of pillow and mattress for each individual rider based on their body structure.
Wow. And a detail that really stands out to me is the team truck. The inside of the truck.
Yes, they painted the inside of the team maintenance truck pure white.
Why white?
The purpose wasn't aesthetics. It was so that the mechanics could spot tiny bits of dust or grit that might otherwise go unnoticed against a dark background. Ensuring the finely tuned bikes were always absolutely pristine and performing optimally. Hundreds and hundreds of these 1% improvements all adding up.
That sounds incredible, but I have to ask. If they're optimizing everything by 1%, doesn't that become prohibitively expensive or just ridiculously time-consuming? Where's the line between a marginal gain and, well, marginal absurdity?
That's a really valid, critical point. And look, for an elite, well-funded team focused on global dominance, the payoff clearly outweighed the cost. They had the resources.
Okay.
But for the average person listening, the lesson isn't, go hire a hand-washing surgeon.
Right.
The lesson is that the system needs to touch every aspect of your life, not just the main action itself. We often stop at, okay, I'll train harder or I'll study more.
Yeah. But we should be examining our sleep, our nutrition, our recovery, our environment. The British cycling story proves that the environment often matters just as much as the direct effort.
And the result just speaks for itself, doesn't it? They achieved complete, utter dominance in the sport.
Totally. Within 5 years, at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, British cycling won 60% of the available gold medals.
Yeah.
60%.
Incredible.
They set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. And in the Tour de France, they racked up 5 victories in 6 years between Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome. It was, by far, the most successful run in cycling history, all built on hundreds of these cumulative tiny inputs. This staggering outcome from seemingly mundane inputs brings up a crucial problem, though, which the sources addressed directly. Why do people quit when they're making these small changes? It's that frustrating period, the plateau of latent potential.
Ah, yes, the valley of disappointment. It's the gap between our expectation and the reality that derails nearly everyone, I think. We expect the effort we put in today to result in noticeable progress tomorrow, or maybe next week.
Yeah, we want immediate feedback.
But habit progress is delayed. It's stored up, and then suddenly it seems to be unleashed. The source uses a perfect illustration to capture this frustration: the ice cube analogy.
Okay, walk us through how that 1-degree shift changes everything.
Right. Imagine an ice cube sitting in a cold room.
Yeah.
You start heating the room slowly. It goes from, say, 25 degrees Fahrenheit up to 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees.
Okay. Nothing's happening.
Exactly. For all intents and purposes, nothing has happened. The heat you've applied seems utterly ineffective. You might think, this isn't working. I'm just wasting my time and energy.
Yeah, I'd probably give up around 30 degrees.
Most people would. But then at 32 degrees, a seemingly insignificant 1-degree shift, the ice cube suddenly starts to melt. Boom.
So the breakthrough moment feels instant, but it's really the result of all the previous invisible work that came before that critical point.
Precisely. The work wasn't wasted. It was simply stored, building up potential energy, just like the heat in the room. That moment of sudden, dramatic change, the breakthrough, is the result of many, many previous unnoticeable actions that eventually push the system past a critical threshold.
So mastery requires immense patience to endure this plateau of latent potential.
Immense patience. We are always working toward that melting point, even when it feels like nothing is moving at all.
It reminds me of that stonecutter analogy.
Yeah.
You know the one. It supposedly hangs in the San Antonio Spurs locker room.
Oh, yeah, I know it. You hammer away at a rock maybe 100 times and nothing happens.
Right. Then, on the 101st blow, it splits in two.
And it wasn't the last blow that broke the stone.
But all that had gone before.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay, if the payoff is delayed and immediate results aren't motivating us, we have to shift our focus away from the outcome itself. How do we do that? How do we stay motivated?
That leads us directly into the hierarchy of change and the critical need, according to the sources, to focus on systems rather than just outcomes or goals.
Okay, let's clarify that distinction. Goals versus systems. What's the core difference?
So goals are essentially about the results you want to achieve. Winning a championship, losing 20 pounds, finishing writing your novel.
The destination.
Exactly, the destination. Systems, on the other hand, are about the processes that lead to those results. How you recruit players, how you practice daily, how you manage your coaching staff, how you eat every day, the writing ritual you follow every morning.
So for a professional baseball player, the goal is winning the World Series. But the system is the daily grind. The strength training, the batting practice, studying pitchers, the recovery habits.
Precisely. And the core insight here, which is quite radical actually, is that we should maybe forget setting goals entirely, or at least seriously de-emphasize them.
Forget goals, really?
Well, the idea is to focus entirely on fixing the inputs, the system, and the outputs. The results will inevitably fix themselves over time. Goals provide a sense of direction, which is necessary, sure, but systems are the engine that provides consistent progress.
I understand the emphasis on systems, but surely we need goals to provide any motivation at all. If we only focus on the process, how do we prevent just aimless wandering? Aren't goals the point?
That's a good challenge, yeah. And the source addresses it by saying, goals are good for planning your progress. Systems are good for actually making progress.
Okay, planning versus making.
Think of it like this. Goals are useful for setting the initial direction pointing the ship north. But once the journey starts, you should spend like 99% of your time focused on the quality of the navigational system, the process of sailing, not constantly looking at the map asking, are we there yet?
Okay.
When you fall in love with the process itself, you no longer rely on sporadic motivation tied to some future date or achievement. The work itself becomes the reward, in a way.
That makes sense. Let's look at the 4 distinct problems the source identifies with getting stuck in that goals-first mindset. What's the first one?
Problem one is immediately obvious if you just stop to think about it. Winners and losers often have the exact same goals.
Right. Every athlete on the field wants the championship. Every job applicant wants the job.
Exactly. So if the successful people and the unsuccessful people share the same objective, the objective itself cannot be what differentiates them. What differentiated British cycling wasn't the goal of winning the Tour de France. Every team had that goal. It was their detailed system of aggregation of marginal gains.
Okay, good point. What's problem number two?
Problem two is that achieving a goal is only a momentary change. It doesn't last.
Ah, right. Like if my goal is just to clean my horribly messy apartment.
Yeah, you spend a weekend tidying it up, it looks great for now, but if you don't change the underlying sloppy habits, the system of just putting things down wherever you happen to be, it'll be messy again within a week, maybe two.
You're treating the symptom, not the cause.
Exactly. You haven't fixed the system that produced the mess in the first place.
Okay, number three.
Problem three is a subtle but really powerful psychological trap. Goals restrict happiness. They often create this either-or conflict in our minds. I'll be happy once I reach this milestone.
Yeah, I'll be happy when I lose the weight or get the promotion or finish the project.
Right. This perpetually postpones satisfaction and locks your happiness behind some future achievement that might never even come or might not feel as good as you expect when it does.
So what's the antidote?
The antidote, according to the sources, is falling in love with the process, with the system. You can be satisfied and feel successful anytime your system is running, regardless of the output score that particular day. You focus on being present in the work, not just dreaming about the future score.
That's a big shift.
Uh.
And finally, problem four, which we see everywhere.
Goals are often at odds with long-term progress. We call this the yo-yo effect.
Like dieting. Lose weight for the wedding, then gain it all back.
Exactly like dieting. Or think of a writer who works incredibly hard for a year to finish a manuscript. They submit it, and then they stop writing entirely because the deadline, the goal, is gone.
Right, the motivation evaporates.
Yeah. If your work is singularly focused on a specific goal, the motivation often disappears right after achievement, and you just revert to your old, comfortable habits. The system wasn't ingrained.
Okay, so to solve these fundamental problems with goals, we have to drill down to the deepest layer of change. What is that?
Identity. The sources lay out 3 layers of change. Outcomes, what you get. Processes, what you do. And identity, what you believe.
Outcomes, processes, identity.
Okay, most people focus on the outcome, the weight lost, the income earned. But the most effective, lasting change has to happen from the inside out, starting with identity-based habits.
So we start by focusing on who we wish to become, rather than just what we wish to achieve. That anecdote about quitting smoking really encapsulates this shift perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does. It highlights the massive difference between someone saying, no thanks, I'm trying to quit, versus someone saying, no thanks, I'm not a smoker.
Huge difference in mindset.
Huge. The first person still identifies as a smoker who is struggling, fighting against their nature, trying to be something else. The behavior change feels temporary and requires constant willpower.
Right.
The second person has fundamentally shifted their identity. Their action, not smoking, is just a natural manifestation of their core belief about who they are. Behavior that is incongruent with the self, with your identity, it simply will not last.
And the sources are really clear that this identity shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens through evidence accumulation.
Yes. Every single action we take is literally a vote cast for the type of person we wish to become.
A vote. I like that.
Small habits are meaningful, not necessarily because of their immediate dramatic results, but because they provide that crucial evidence of a new identity building up.
Okay, give us an example of that in action.
Think about the friend mentioned in the sources who successfully lost over 100 pounds. She didn't obsess over the scale or a specific goal number initially. Instead, she continually asked herself one simple question before every decision, big or small.
Which was?
What would a healthy person do?
Oh, simple but profound.
Right. Would a healthy person order the sugary drink or water? Would they take the escalator or the stairs? Would they eat this processed snack or grab an apple? By consistently casting hundreds of these small votes for the healthy identity day after day, she gradually became that person. The weight loss was simply the natural outcome of that internal identity shift.
That concept of voting for your desired self is incredibly practical. It makes it feel achievable. But the sources also note a profound downside to this identity conflict. And this is cited as the biggest barrier to change.
It really is. It's the internal resistance that stops us dead in our tracks. We can't be too attached to one version of ourselves, even if that version was once successful or felt comfortable.
How did that play out?
Well, if you fundamentally identify as someone who is too busy to read, or not a morning person, or just bad with numbers, those deeply held beliefs will continuously sabotage your efforts to form new habits that contradict them.
Even if the new habit makes rational sense.
Exactly. The internal conflict is simple but powerful. I believe I am X, but I am trying to force myself to do Y. That dissonance is uncomfortable.
And that resistance makes perfect evolutionary sense, doesn't it? We're kind of wired to be consistent with our beliefs. It helps us navigate the world safely and predictably.
Absolutely. Our brain hates internal contradiction. So, progress, real progress, requires a continuous willingness to let go of old identities, to unlearn old, limiting self-images, and continuously edit and expand our beliefs about ourselves based on our actions.
So you have to be comfortable saying, okay, that's who I was, but that's not who I am voting to become now.
Precisely. It's an ongoing process of becoming.
Okay, now that we understand why small changes matter, the compounding effect, and where we should focus our efforts on identity, let's get into the mechanics. How do habits actually form in the brain? The sources lay out the science, going way back to Edward Thorndike's experiments in 1898.
Yeah, Thorndike's work with cats and puzzle boxes is foundational. It established the basic principle of habit formation through trial and error. He'd trap a cat in a box.
Poor cat.
Yeah. Well, the cat had to figure out how to escape by pulling a cord or pressing a lever to get to a desirable reward waiting outside, usually a bowl of food.
And the first time, it was just total chaos, right? The cat's just randomly scratching and clawing everywhere.
Exactly. Random, frantic movements until, by sheer chance, it hits the magical lever and the door opens. Freedom, food, reward.
Mm-hmm.
The next time the cat was placed in the box, it would still claw around a bit, but it tended to find the lever slightly faster. With repetition, all the unnecessary actions gradually disappeared, and the escape became automatic and immediate. The connection between the cue, being in the box, and the response, pulling the lever, became neurologically hardwired.
And this trial and error process is exactly why our brains bother forming habits at all, isn't it? It's all about reducing the cognitive load, freeing up mental energy.
It's fundamentally a survival mechanism. Our conscious mind is the bottleneck of the brain. It can really only focus effectively on one problem at a time. Habit formation is the brain's elegant solution for efficiency. It creates these mental shortcuts, basically, a pre-programmed set of instructions that allows us to perform routine actions without conscious effort or thought.
Like driving a car or brushing your teeth.
Exactly. This frees up our limited conscious attention to focus on novel situations, new challenges, learning new things. Habits are essentially learned solutions to recurring problems in our environment.
So what's the four-step framework that forms the backbone of every single habit, whether it's good or bad?
It's this perpetual feedback loop that drives basically everything we do. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Yeah.
4 steps.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. The cue. What is that?
The cue is the trigger. It's the bit of sensory information, something you see, hear, smell, feel, or even a thought that initiates the behavior because it predicts a reward is coming.
So like seeing a notification pop up on your phone.
Perfect example. Or the smell of coffee brewing, hearing the ding of a microwave, feeling stressed. Your brain is continually scanning the environment, consciously and unconsciously, for these hints that a reward is possible.
Which leads immediately to the second step, the engine of the whole process. The craving.
The craving is the motivational force behind every habit, and this is crucial. You do not actually crave the habit itself. You crave the change in internal state the habit delivers.
Say more about that. That's interesting.
Well, you don't crave biting your nails, right? You crave the momentary relief from anxiety or boredom it provides. You don't crave smoking a cigarette itself. You crave the feeling of stress relief it brings. You don't crave turning on the TV. You crave the feeling of being entertained or distracted.
So every craving is fundamentally a desire to feel differently than you do in that moment.
Precisely. It's a desire to change your internal state.
Okay, step 3 is the response.
This is the actual habit you perform, the action or the thought pattern. For a response to occur, you obviously have to be physically and mentally capable of performing it. If the response requires too much effort or seems too difficult, the habit breaks down right here.
Makes sense. And finally, step 4, the reward, which closes the loop.
The reward is the end goal of every habit. It satisfies the craving. It's the outcome that teaches the brain which actions are worth remembering and repeating in the future. Ah, that felt good, or that solved the problem. The loop closes when the craving is satisfied, and the brain effectively tags that whole cue craving response sequence as valuable for future recall, reinforcing the entire system.
So the cue and craving make up the problem phase. The brain realizing something needs attention, and the response and reward make up the solution phase, taking action and learning from the outcome.
That's the core mechanism, yeah. And to make this super practical and actionable, these 4 steps map directly onto what the source calls the 4 laws of behavior change. This gives us a clear guide for implementation.
Okay, give us the quick summary of the 4 laws before we dive deep into the application of each one.
Absolutely. So, to create a good habit, you follow these 4 laws.
Make it obvious. That targets the cue.
Make it attractive. That targets the cravings.
Make it easy. That targets the response.
Make it satisfying. That targets the reward.
Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Got it. And to break a bad habit, you just apply the inversion of each law.
Exactly. The inversion works just as well. First law inversion, make it invisible. Second law inversion, make it unattractive. Third law inversion, make it difficult. Fourth law inversion, make it unsatisfying.
Okay, fantastic framework. With that established, let's get into the practical application, starting with the first law. Make it obvious. The biggest barrier here, as the source points out, is often just a lack of clarity. We fail because our intentions are too vague, right? I'll exercise more, or I'll eat healthier.
Exactly. Too vague. The best tool to combat that vagueness is something called an implementation intention. This is simply a specific plan you make in advance about exactly when and where you intend to perform a new habit. You're basically externalizing the decision-making process so you don't have to rely on willpower or memory in the moment.
And the formula for this is so simple, it's almost deceptive. I will have behavior at time and location.
Its simplicity really hides its power. There was an excellent study cited where people were trying to build better exercise habits. You had a control group and you had a motivation group who read pamphlets about all the health benefits of exercise. Their compliance rates were pretty low, only around 35% to 38%.
Pretty typical, probably.
Yeah. But the third group, the group that used implementation intentions, they simply filled out that one sentence. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day at time and place.
And the result?
Their compliance rate shot up to 91%.
91%. Just from writing down that one sentence.
Yep. They more than doubled their adherence rate simply by being crystal clear about the cue, the specific time and location. It removes that internal debate of, should I do it now? Maybe later. You've already decided. The plan is set.
That's powerful. Building on that, we have habit stacking, which sounds related. It pairs a new habit with an old established one.
Exactly. It leverages the cues that are already running automatically in your day. It's another way to make the cue for your new habit totally obvious and unavoidable.
And the formula for this one is after current habit, I will new habit.
Right. This works because your current habits, brushing your teeth, pouring your coffee, taking off your shoes when you get home, these are cues you already follow without even thinking. So, for example, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds.
Okay, using the coffee as the trigger.
Or if you're trying to cut down on clutter, when I buy a new item, I will immediately give one away. One in, one out. The established habit buying something new acts as the automatic trigger for the new desired behavior decluttering.
Very clever. And this leads us directly to the critical importance of environment design, which the source calls the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. This seems huge.
It is huge. We often assume change requires massive willpower, gritting your teeth. But if your environment is constantly fighting against you, you're probably going to lose that battle eventually. Small, even subtle changes in your context and your surroundings can lead to large, surprisingly easy changes in behavior over time.
So the key is making the desired cues visible and accessible, and the undesired cues invisible or difficult to access.
Precisely. Think about the famous Schiphol Airport urinal fly sticker story.
Ah, yes, the fly in the urinal. Explain that one.
It's a classic. The cleaning staff at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport were apparently having trouble with spillage around the urinals, so they etched a small image of a realistic-looking black fly near the drain in each urinal.
And what happened?
Spillage rates reduced dramatically. The source cited an 8% cut in bathroom cleaning costs. Why? Because it gave men something to aim at, a visual cue. They changed the environment, and behavior instantly followed without a single written instruction or plea for better aim.
That's brilliant. Just pure behavioral design.
And it works for positive habits, too. Making healthy choices more visible works wonders. Think of Dr. Ann Thorndike's cafeteria study at Massachusetts General Hospital.
Right. They wanted to improve the health of hospital staff and visitors without nagging them or requiring them to use willpower.
Exactly. So what did they do? All they did was change the placement of beverages in the main cafeteria. They added bottled water to every drink's refrigerator near the food stations, which previously had only contained soda and sugary drinks.
They just made water more obvious and convenient.
That's it. They didn't lecture anyone. They didn't ban soda. They simply made water the easy, visible choice. Soda sales dropped by 11.4%, and bottled water sales increased by 25.8%. Behavior changed simply because the environment made the good habit easier to see and access than the bad one.
That's a powerful lesson in making the easy choice, the healthy choice by default. And the idea of separating contexts is key here too, right? The one space, one use rule.
Oh, crucial for focus, especially now when so many people work from home. Avoid mixing contexts for your habits. If your couch is where you watch TV and work on your laptop and pay bills and eat dinner, the easiest, most rewarding habit, probably relaxation or watching TV, usually wins out. The cues get jumbled.
So you should try to dedicate a specific space for specific activities.
Ideally, yes, a specific chair just for reading, a desk only for working, a particular spot in the living room for exercise. Even if you have limited space, just mentally dividing a room into activity zones can help. The goal is to make the environment stable so the context itself becomes the cue for a specific, high-value behavior. Entering that space triggers the right mindset.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense for making habits obvious. Let's move on to the second law, make it attractive. This is where we get into the dopamine rave, which, as you mentioned, is often severely misunderstood by the general public.
It really is. For decades, dopamine was incorrectly labeled the pleasure molecule. People thought it was released after you got a reward. But the newer research shows that dopamine is actually released more strongly, not when you experience pleasure, but when you anticipate it.
Ah, so is the anticipation, the craving, that's the motivational force driving the action.
Exactly. That's the key insight. Think about those famous experiments with rats or the mice you mentioned earlier that poked their nose in a box 800 times an hour for a little electrical stimulation that released dopamine. They weren't necessarily doing it purely for the pleasure itself. They were driven by the intense craving for the change in state that the dopamine release signaled was coming.
So dopamine is really the desire hormone, the motivation molecule.
Precisely. We don't primarily act because we love the thing itself. We act because we anticipate the satisfaction of the craving that the thing promises. Therefore, to make a habit attractive, we need to somehow hack our cravings, make the anticipation more appealing. Which leads us directly to temptation bundling.
Right. This is linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do, making the need to do more attractive.
Exactly. It makes the required behavior more enticing by pairing it immediately with a reward you already look forward to. The classic example is the engineering student, Ronan Byrne, who famously hacked his stationary bike.
What did he do?
He bundled watching Netflix, the thing he wanted to do, with riding his stationary bike, the thing he needed to do for exercise. He literally wired the bike to his laptop so that Netflix would only stream if he was pedaling at a certain minimum speed.
Huh. That's brilliant. Stop pedaling, the show stops.
Exactly. Instant consequence. You can apply this principle anywhere. Only allow yourself to listen to your favorite, maybe slightly trashy podcast while you're doing chores you dislike. Or only get your fancy coffee on days you go to the gym.
It creates a want-driven cue or reward for the need-driven response. Makes perfect sense. The source also emphasizes that the attractiveness of habits is profoundly influenced by our social environment. We tend to imitate the habits of 3 specific groups in particular.
Yes, this is huge. We are fundamentally social creatures. First, we imitate the close our friends and family. Proximity has a powerful, often invisible effect on our behavior.
Like that obesity study.
Exactly. The source mentions a large study that tracked people over 32 years and found that a person's chances of becoming obese increased by a staggering 57% if they had a close friend who became obese. We just soak up the qualities, norms, and habits of those physically and emotionally nearest to us, often without realizing it.
Okay, so the close. Who's next?
Next, we imitate the many, our tribe, our culture, the group we belong to. This is driven by our ancient, deep-seated human desire to belong and fit in.
Survival instinct, basically.
Pretty much. We are herd animals at heart. Historically, conformity meant survival. Going against the tribe was dangerous, so we naturally look to the group to guide our behavior. If your tribe hunts deer, you hunt deer. If your friends all vape, you're more likely to vape. If everyone in your office works late, you feel pressure to work late too.
This is like the famous Asch conformity experiment, right? Where people chose the obviously wrong answer just to go along with the crowd.
Exactly. That experiment showed that around 75% of subjects chose the wrong line length at least once, simply to conform with the incorrect answers given by the actors in the room. When changing your habits means fitting in better with your desired tribe, that change becomes highly attractive.
Okay, so the close, the many, and the third group.
And finally, we imitate the powerful. Those people who have status, respect, admiration, success.
We copy people we look up to.
We do. We're naturally drawn to behaviors that we perceive earn respect, approval, and status because historically, status granted access to better resources, better mates, better opportunities. So we naturally copy the behavior of people we envy or people we deem successful in a particular domain.
Like replicating the marketing strategies of the top firms in your industry, or mimicking the communication style of a boss or mentor you admire.
Precisely. So if you want to adopt a new habit, one powerful strategy is to find and join a group where your desired behavior is the normal, celebrated behavior, especially if that group has some status you aspire to. Surround yourself with people for whom the habit is attractive.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the third law. Make it easy. This section really drills down on that crucial, often overlooked difference between motion and action.
Yes, and this is where so many people get tripped up, myself included sometimes. Motion is all the planning, the strategizing, the learning, the researching. It feels productive, like reading 5 books about how to start a business or outlining 20 ideas for blog posts.
Right, you feel like you're making progress.
You do. But motion by itself produces no tangible result. Action, on the other hand, is the behavior that actually delivers an outcome like making the first sales call or actually writing 1 page of the blog post.
And I think we all get stuck in motion sometimes because it allows us to feel like we're making progress without the inherent risk of failure or judgment that comes with actually doing the thing. Preparation often becomes a sneaky form of procrastination, doesn't it? Masquerading as productive work.
That's the psychological trap exactly. Motion allows you to delay potential failure indefinitely. But real success, the kind that compounds, requires getting the reps in, making mistakes, learning, and adjusting. It's about volume and practice, not just endless speculation about perfection.
Like that famous photography class example.
Perfect illustration. The professor divided the class into 2 groups. The quantity group was told they'd be graded solely on the number of photos they submitted. 100 photos got an A, 90 got a B, and so on. The quality group was told they only needed to produce 1 photo, but it had to be nearly perfect to get an A.
And the result.
At the end of the term, all the best photographs were produced by the students in the quantity group.
Really, why?
Because they were constantly out there shooting, experimenting with composition, trying different lighting, learning from their mistakes, getting feedback through sheer volume. The quality group, meanwhile, had mostly sat around speculating about what makes a perfect photograph, theorizing, and ended up with little to show for it because they were stuck in motion, paralyzed by the pursuit of perfection.
Wow. Action beats motion. So the key then is to make starting the action, taking that first step, incredibly easy. Which brings us to the famous 2-minute rule.
Yes. The 2-minute rule is beautifully simple. It states that when you're starting any new habit, scale it down so that it takes less than 2 minutes to do.
Less than 2 minutes, that's it.
That's it. The goal isn't necessarily to achieve the full habit immediately. The goal is to master the art of showing up, to make starting effortless. So, run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes and step outside. Read 30 pages becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat.
You're just lowering the barrier to entry so much that you can't really argue with yourself about doing it.
Exactly. You make it too easy to say no. It's the concept of the gateway habit, isn't it? The beginning of the routine, that first tiny action, is often the most critical step.
Awesome.
Because habits are like the entrance ramp onto a highway. Once you take that first small step, once you merge onto the road, it creates momentum. It leads you down a predetermined path. And often, it's easier to just continue down that path than it is to stop and get off.
Like Twyla Tharp, the great dancer and choreographer. Her ritual wasn't the 2 hours of intense training itself.
Right. Her core ritual, the part she focused on making automatic, was simply hailing the cab to go to the gym at 5:30 every single morning. That was the 2-minute action. Once she was in the cab, the rest of the workout basically took care of itself. The hardest part was just starting.
So you're not focused on getting fit immediately. You're focused on becoming the type of person who never misses the first easy step of the workout, the identity shift again.
Exactly. You standardize before you optimize. Master the art of showing up.
Okay. And finally, under making it easy, there's the idea of automating future behavior using commitment devices. This is kind of the inversion of making a bad habit difficult, right?
Yes. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that controls or restricts your actions in the future. It locks you into good behavior or locks you out of bad behavior, removing the need for heroic willpower in the moment of temptation.
You're essentially making the good habit the path of least resistance, or the bad habit much harder.
Precisely. It increases the friction for the bad habit to such an extreme that it becomes almost impossible, or at least very inconvenient. The classic, almost comical example is Victor Hugo.
The author, what did he do?
When he was facing a tight deadline for writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he apparently had his assistant lock away all of his clothes except for a large shawl.
Locked away his clothes. Why?
To force himself to stay inside and write, he literally couldn't go outside comfortably without his clothes. He made leaving the house the temptation to procrastinate incredibly difficult and uncomfortable. He engineered his environment.
That's commitment. A more modern, maybe less extreme version could be using an outlet timer to automatically cut off the power to your internet router or TV at, say, 10 p.m. each night.
Perfect example. It removes the temptation to keep scrolling or watching by making it physically harder. You'd have to go find the timer, unplug it, plug the router back in. It adds friction.
It disrupts the automatic pattern.
Right. And John Henry Patterson, the founder of NCR, National Cash Register, provides a great business example from history. His general store back in the 1800s was struggling because his employees were apparently stealing cash from the till.
Okay, common problem.
He didn't try to lecture them or retrain them or change his thieving employees' morality. He couldn't easily change them. So what did he do? He purchased some of the very first newly invented cash registers, which automatically locked the cash drawer after each transaction and printed receipts.
He automated ethical behavior.
Exactly. He made stealing practically impossible, or at least much, much harder and more traceable. He dramatically increased the friction of the bad habit. The core lesson is often, don't try to overcome a bad environment with willpower alone. Change the environment itself to make the good habit easy and the bad habit difficult.
Great examples.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads us logically to the fourth and final law. Make it satisfying. Why is this step, the reward, the final step in the loop, so crucial for making habits stick long term?
This is really the retention mechanism. If the response, the habit you perform, is not satisfying in some way, it simply won't be repeated for long. The cardinal rule of behavior change, according to the source, is this. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
Immediately. That word seems key.
It is absolutely key, but this runs smack into a fundamental psychological conflict with modern life, which often favors bad habits precisely because of this immediacy.
How so?
Because our brains are fundamentally wired for an immediate return environment. Think about our ancestors on the savannah. Their actions immediately affected survival. Did I find food now? Did I escape the predator now? Did I find shelter now? Immediate feedback was critical.
Okay, makes sense.
But we now live mostly in a delayed return environment. The rewards for many of our most important behaviors, working hard at a job, saving money, eating healthy, exercising, are often delayed by weeks, months, or even years.
Right, you don't get fit after one workout. You don't get rich after saving one paycheck.
Exactly. This tension between our immediate return wiring and our delayed return reality creates what psychologists call time inconsistency, or maybe more technically, hyperbolic discounting.
Hyperbolic discounting, that sounds complicated, but what does it mean for our daily habits in simple terms?
It basically means that our brain assigns a much higher value to rewards that are available right now compared to rewards that are coming in the future, even if the future reward is objectively much larger or better. We heavily discount the value of future rewards.
And bad habits exploit this perfectly.
Perfectly. The immediate outcome of smoking a cigarette or eating junk food feels good right now. A hit of nicotine, a reduction in stress, a rush of sugar. Even though the ultimate massive negative health outcome is delayed by years or decades, our brain prioritizes the immediate satisfaction.
Conversely, Good habits are often hard because the immediate outcome is unpleasant or requires effort.
Right. The immediate outcome of going for a run might be pain, sweat, or discomfort. The immediate outcome of resisting dessert is deprivation. The ultimate reward of better health or fitness is delayed far into the future. So our immediate return brain often says, nah, not worth it right now.
Okay, so the goal then for building good habits is to use immediate reinforcement somehow. We need to find a way to bridge that gap, to give ourselves a little hit of satisfaction now while we wait for the long-term rewards, the weight loss, the promotion, the finished novel to finally kick in.
Precisely. We need to manufacture a little bit of immediate pleasure for our good habits and, conversely, immediate, tangible pain for our bad ones to align our short-term actions with our long-term goals. This is especially helpful for those tricky habits of avoidance, where you don't get a natural, rewarding feeling for not doing something bad.
Right, like not spending money frivolously, or not eating that second slice of cake, or not checking social media every 5 minutes. How do you make doing nothing feel satisfying?
You have to make the avoidance visible and feel rewarding in the present moment. You can create a simple tracking system or a visual reward. For instance, say you're trying to save money by cutting back on impulse buys. You could open a special savings account and label it something exciting like Trip to Europe Fund or New Leather Jacket Fund.
Okay.
Then, every time you successfully resist making a frivolous purchase you were tempted by, you immediately transfer the exact amount of money you would have spent into that special savings account.
Ah, so you get an immediate hit of satisfaction seeing that account balance grow.
Exactly. That immediate, tangible reward of seeing the account balance tick up makes the act of not spending feel good right now. It reinforces the positive habit by aligning the short-term reward, seeing the money saved, with the long-term vision, the trip or the jacket.
That's clever. And that satisfaction can be leveraged powerfully through tracking and accountability, too. The paperclip strategy is a perfect, simple example of turning an invisible task into a satisfying visual win.
Oh yeah, Trent Dersman used this brilliantly when he started out as a rookie stockbroker. He knew he needed to make 120 sales calls every single day to succeed, which sounds incredibly tedious.
Yeah, daunting.
So what did he do? He got 2 empty jars. He put 120 paper clips in one jar. After every single sales call he made, he would physically move one paper clip from the full jar to the empty jar.
Simple visual progress.
Super simple, but powerful. He was tracking his progress visibly, creating an immediate, measurable micro-success for an otherwise repetitive, often unrewarding task. The source says that within 18 months, he became a top broker earning over $5 million, largely attributed to the satisfying visual momentum created by just moving those paper clips and not breaking the chain of calls each day.
So tracking, done right, makes a behavior obvious. Do I move the clip or not?
Okay.
Attractive, I want to empty that first jar.
Yeah.
And immediately satisfying. I see clear progress. But we have to discuss the potential dark side of measurement here, which the source mentions, Goodhart's Law.
Yes, this is a really critical caveat. Goodhart's Law basically states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
What does that mean in practice?
It means that human beings are exceptionally clever at gaming systems, especially when rewards or punishments are tied directly to hitting a specific number. If you only track, say, the number of books you read per month, you might find yourself subconsciously starting to choose shorter, easier books just to pump up your stats, rather than reading what would actually benefit you most.
Right, or if a company only tracks sales revenue as the key metric, the sales team might start pushing deals that are bad for the customer long term, or neglecting crucial but harder to measure behaviors like customer satisfaction or building relationships just to hit the target number.
Exactly. If I only track my weight on the scale, I might be tempted to dehydrate myself before a weigh-in to see a lower number, rather than focusing on the actual healthy eating and exercise habits that lead to sustainable fat loss. The measurement itself starts distorting the reality it was originally supposed to reflect.
So you have to be careful to ensure you're optimizing for the underlying behavior, the system you want to build, not just the easiest number to track.
Absolutely. Measure what leads to the result, not just the result itself, if possible. And finally, to make bad habits immediately unsatisfying, which is the inversion of this fourth law, we have the ultimate accountability tool, the habit contract.
A contract with yourself or someone else.
Usually with someone else to enforce it. This leverages that core principle. If an undesirable behavior has an immediate, painful, and reliably enforced consequence, we tend to avoid it.
Makes sense. Behavior only really shifts if the punishment is painful enough and crucially certain to happen.
Exactly. Brian Harris, an entrepreneur mentioned in the source, used a very detailed habit contract with his wife and his personal trainer to enforce his weight loss goals. The contract outlined specific phases, actions he had to take, like food logging, and clear, tangible penalties for noncompliance.
What kind of penalties?
Things like having to pay his trainer a significant amount of money if he missed a workout, or having to dress up in ridiculous clothes for a week if he failed to log his food, or donating to an organization he disliked. These mechanisms add an immediate, tangible, often embarrassing cost to slipping up on the bad habit or failing the good one.
So it overcomes that time inconsistency bias we talked about earlier.
Precisely. You make the present cost of failing heavier than the immediate, fleeting benefit of indulging in the bad habit. You raise the stakes right now.
Okay, this has been an incredibly thorough breakdown of the mechanics. Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's look at what sustains these habits over the really long run, because eventually, even good habits might not feel exciting anymore.
That's a key point. The source says the key to maintaining peak long-term motivation lies in working according to the Goldilocks rule.
Not too hot, not too cold,
Yeah,
just right.
exactly. Maximum human motivation seems to occur when you're working on tasks that are right on the edge of your current abilities. Not so hard that you get frustrated and give up, but not so easy that you get bored. You need that optimal level of challenge, the Goldilocks zone.
It has to be that satisfying balance of manageable difficulty and feeling a sense of progress or achievement. And the sources point out something really interesting here. The greatest threat to long-term success is often not failure, but actually boredom.
Boredom is the silent killer of habits. It's the sign that the task is no longer novel or challenging enough. True professionals, the source argues, understand this and push through it. Think of someone like Steve Martin and his legendary comedy career.
And also,
He apparently faced the fear and grind of bombing on stage, refining his routines, showing up night after night for something like 18 years before he became an overnight success. He wasn't always excited or passionate about showing up to another small club, I guarantee it. But he fell in love with the process, even the boredom of consistent work. He stuck to the schedule even when the motivation was absent.
that's a powerful distinction. So professionalism, at its core, is sticking to the schedule, running the system, even when you lack the mood or the initial excitement.
That's the idea. Amateurs let their feelings dictate their actions. Professionals let their schedule dictate their actions. They fall in love with the boredom.
And finally, the sources bring us back full circle to the importance of choosing the right game in the first place, aligning your habits with your natural inclinations and abilities.
Yes. You have to play a game where the odds are naturally tilted in your favor, at least somewhat. Habits should be easier to build and maintain if they align reasonably well with your biological predispositions and psychological makeup.
Like the analogy of Michael Phelps versus Hisham El Garouche.
Perfect example. Phelps, with his incredibly long torso, huge wingspan, and relatively short legs, physically built almost perfectly for swimming. El Garouche, the legendary Moroccan distance runner, had long legs and a short torso ideal for running. They both worked incredibly hard, but their genetics gave them a significant advantage in their chosen sport.
So genes don't determine your destiny, but they clarify your areas of opportunity.
Exactly. They don't guarantee success, but they tell you where your efforts are likely to compound fastest. Work with your nature, not constantly against it, if you want habits to stick easily.
So what if you feel like you can't find a game where the odds are clearly in your favor? What then?
Then the advice is create one. You reduce the level of competition by combining your unique skill set in a novel way.
Like Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip.
Exactly like him. He readily admits he wasn't the best fine artist, nor the funniest stand-up comedian, nor the most brilliant business expert. But by combining his pretty good drawing skills, his sharp, cynical corporate humor, and his solid understanding of business dynamics, he created a unique niche where he was, relatively speaking, the best in the world. There was no one else quite like him.
So you look for the intersection of your unique skills, even if none are world-class individually, and build habits that reinforce that unique stack. Define your own game.
Precisely. Your highest probability of success is often found not where you're just good competing against thousands, but where your specific combination of skills makes you uniquely positioned to excel.
That's a profound final takeaway. Play a game you can win, or invent a new one.
And this whole circle of change, desire, and action brings us back to a really fundamental relationship between desire and emotion. The source posits something quite stark. Happiness is simply the absence of desire. It arrives, however fleetingly, when you have no compelling urge to change your state, to feel differently.
But if we completely eliminate desire, wouldn't we eliminate all progress, all motivation?
That's the paradox, isn't it? Suffering, which the Source defines as the gap between craving a change in state and actually getting it, is arguably the source of all human progress. The desire for more, for better, for different is what drives us forward. So the ultimate goal isn't necessarily to stop having desires altogether, but perhaps to become more conscious and deliberate about which desires you choose to act upon. To focus your actions, your small daily votes, on becoming the person you truly want to be. You decide where that inevitable suffering or effort is directed.
So don't chase some dramatic overnight transformation. Instead, take one small action today. Cast just one vote for your desired identity. That's the 1% advantage.
That's the essence of it.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the profound power of atomic habits. Thanks for joining us.